Whispers of a Fallen Love. Chapter 1. I floated behind Wei Qi, following him into Princess Jinyang's palace. He walked quickly, his armor clinking. I realized he could be in a hurry to see someone. Outside, the wind was biting cold, but inside, the palace was warm and fragrant. When Princess Jinyang saw Wei Qi, she immediately got out of bed to greet him, barefoot on the soft wool carpet, making anyone's heart flutter. She threw herself into his arms. Wei Qi, you finally came. I was so scared. I watched them from above, they looked so beautiful together. Wei Qi was handsome and tall, like a jade tree. Princess Jinyang was stunningly beautiful, like a goddess. And they were childhood sweethearts. If the Wei family hadn't been exiled to the north due to the emperor's suspicion, Wei Qi would have been the prince consort by now. Now that I was dead, they could rekindle their old feelings. Wei Qi looked down at the princess in his arms, then stepped back and bowed. Princess, there's no need to worry. The rebels have surrendered, and the crisis in Tiandu is over. Princess Jinyang was momentarily stunned, then helped him up. Wei Qi, it's just the two of us here. There's no need to be so formal. Wei Qi stood up but kept his distance. The etiquette between ruler and subject cannot be abandoned. Princess Jinyang asked, are you still angry with me? Angry that I didn't speak up for you back then? Wei Qi replied, I wouldn't dare. Some things are best left in the past. Princess Jinyang leaned into his arms again, looking at him with affection, her delicate hand on his chest. Wei Qi, you quelled the rebellion this time, and the Wei family has made great contributions. Yang Zhao is dead, and father won't stop us from being together anymore. Yang Zhao was Princess Jinyang's husband, who died defending the city from the rebels' arrows last month. And 7 days ago, I was killed by Princess Jinyang. Chapter 2. 7 days ago, Wei Qi was defending the city when someone from the palace summoned the families of the court officials to take refuge in the palace. Wei Qi and I had only been back in Tiandu for a little over a month, and I wasn't familiar with the people in the palace. I didn't want to go, but refusing would be defying an imperial order. The Wei family was already under suspicion by the emperor, and I didn't want to make things difficult for Wei Qi, so I took my maid and guards to the palace. But halfway there, we were ambushed. The maid and guards were killed, and I was knocked unconscious. When I woke up, I was in Princess Jinyang's palace. I lay on the bed, weak, while palace maids dressed me in the princess's clothes. Princess Jinyang stroked my face with her fingers, her nails painted with henna, lightly scratching my skin. The harsh north produced such a beauty, she said coldly. I quickly replied, I don't dare, princess. You are of noble birth, and I am but a commoner. She smiled and asked, did your husband ever tell you that you look very much like me? I didn't know how to answer because I did resemble her by 6 or 7 points, but Wei Qi had never mentioned it. She continued, he married you because you look like me. He treated you as me when he was with you. Otherwise, why would a mere official's daughter deserve him? I stared at her, feeling a pang of bitterness. People in the north had said the same thing, that Wei Qi married me because I looked like his beloved. In the 3 years of our marriage, he was only warm to me in bed. The rest of the time, he was distant. No matter how I tried to make him happy, he would only say, don't be silly. And my background was indeed unworthy. My mother died a few days after I was born, and my father remarried soon after. They never gave me a proper name, and I still went by my childhood nickname, Amara. Finally, she grabbed my neck and whispered in my ear, when he was with you, he called out my name, didn't he? I looked into her triumphant eyes and replied, he never did. I wasn't lying. Wei Qi never called her name. But he never called mine either. Chapter 3. As I recalled these memories, I looked at Wei Qi. His expression was calm, betraying no hint of emotion. I had been dead for 7 days, and he had been defending the city the entire time. I wondered if he had noticed my absence by now. At this moment, it was just Wei Qi and Princess Jinniang in the hall. With the princess throwing herself at him like this, he could finally have his wish fulfilled. But I liked him. From the first time I saw him, I liked him. That day, at dawn, he rode through the northern mist on his warhorse, leading his troops to attack the Chilo tribe, who had taken us as slaves. The tribe fled in panic, leaving us behind. He cut my shackles and gave me a flask of water when I was dying of thirst. He might not remember the dirty, disheveled girl, but I had etched his image deeply into my memory. Wei Qi. Princess Jinniang's soft voice called out as she wrapped her arms around Wei Qi's neck and stood on tiptoe to kiss him. The bed behind them was where I had died. Princess Jinniang had killed me on that bed without a trace of fear. Not wanting to see their tender scene, I floated out of the hall. Just as I reached the door, I heard Wei Qi's voice, "Who was the woman who died in your place that day?" I was startled and turned back to see Wei Qi standing a step away from Princess Jinniang. Her face turned slightly pale. "Why are you asking about this all of a sudden?" I listened closely. Had he discovered that Princess Jinniang had killed me? Was he here to seek justice for me? Wei Qi replied, "Now that people of Tiandu know you're alive, I believe we should reward the family of the woman who died in your place to comfort the citizens. So he wasn't here because of me. He just didn't want Princess Jinniang to be criticized." I felt a bit disheartened. That day, when I told Princess Jinniang he had never called her name during our intimacy, she strangled me with white silk. I lay on the soft bed in lavish clothes, covered by a white cloth. Princess Jinniang cried and claimed I was her maid, saying I had sacrificed myself to save her from humiliation. I realized the rebels had demanded Princess Jinniang in exchange for provisions for the city's citizens. She was terrified, so she killed me and used my body to pretend she had died heroically. No one doubted her story since it was common for loyal servants to die in place of their masters. Plus, I had only been in Tiandu for a month, and no one really knew me. Wei Qi was summoned to the palace, where the emperor ordered him to deliver my body to the rebel camp, saying the princess had died for her honor. At that time, Wei Qi glanced at the corpse but did not recognize me. I thought he would, considering we'd been married for so long. When he was gravely injured on the battlefield during our first year of marriage, I had found him in a pile of corpses at a glance. But he didn't recognize me. My body was on the cart, and he walked right beside it. We were inches apart. I floated beside him, praying he would lift the cloth and see me, not deliver me to the rebels. He didn't hear me, and only the snow gently fell on my body. The people of Tiandu wept, saying the princess had died for the country and swearing to avenge her. When we reached the rebel camp, the rebel leader lifted the cloth covering my face and was very pleased. Wei Qi's attention was focused on the rebels, and he still didn't notice it was me on the cart. The rebels took my body, saying even a corpse of such a noble and beautiful princess was valuable. Now, I don't know what became of my body, but I doubt it ended well. Chapter 4. Princess Jinniang paused for a moment and replied to Wei Qi. Her name was Chun Yun, from Pingnan. I don't know much else, but I'll find out and let you know. When she lied, she did it so calmly that it was impossible to tell. My name is Su Amara. I never liked this hasty name, but I disliked being called Chun Yun even more. Wei Qi listened and then asked, I have one more question, Princess. I heard that on the day the rebels attacked the city, the palace summoned the families of court officials. Did you see my wife? Princess Jinniang's expression showed some displeasure. Your wife? Wei Qi nodded. I went to defend the city that day and told her not to leave the estate. But when I returned yesterday, she and her maid and guard were gone. She's usually quite lively but knows her limits. Unless summoned by the palace, she wouldn't have gone out. Princess Jinniang looked at him. Father did summon the families to the palace for refuge, but some didn't come, and others were killed by the rebels on their way. I don't know the specifics. Wei Qi's face darkened a bit, and he turned to leave the hall. Where are you going? Won't you stay with me? I've waited for you so long, Princess Jinniang stopped him. Wei Qi replied, the rebels have just surrendered. I have military matters to attend to. Wei Qi, my birthday is at the beginning of the month. Will you come? Princess Jinniang asked softly. Wei Qi looked at her and finally nodded before leaving. I felt a pang of sadness. Wei Qi had never spent my birthday with me, he was always on duty. Princess Jinniang bit her lip, watching his departing figure. Someone, come. Several shadowy figures appeared behind her. Find Su Amara's body and burn it. Leave no evidence, she ordered coldly. Chapter 5. I followed Wei Qi as he hurried out. By now, it was already dark. He walked even faster than when he arrived, the cold wind and snowflakes settling on his lashes, forming tiny droplets. I remembered the day we got married. He came into the room looking just like this, cold, with water droplets on his lashes. The Wei family had been in the north for 3 years, and Wei Qi was already 20, but no one dared to marry their daughter to him. Everyone thought the Wei family wouldn't survive long, that they would be executed by the emperor sooner or later. Many Wei family members died in battle during those years, and the family desperately needed heirs. My father lost a bet and had a debt to pay, so he married me off. That night, I looked at him nervously, and he quietly watched me. I didn't know then that I resembled his beloved. I only thought about being a good wife and bearing his children. So I stepped forward to help him undress. Finally, he kissed me, and the water droplets on his lashes fell onto my face like tears. Perhaps, fate had already sealed our destiny at that moment. General Wei, please wait. Someone called out to him. Wei Qi and I turned to see Zhang Yi from the palace. He had treated me when I was feeling unwell before I died. But before he could tell me the results, the imperial edict arrived. After exchanging pleasantries, Zhang Yi said, has the young madam not been found yet? Wei Qi shook his head. Zhang Yi's face was full of concern. General, you must send more people to find her. The young madam is pregnant. She can't stay out there for long. Wei Qi's expression shifted. What did you say? Zhang Yi continued, I diagnosed her 7 days ago and found that she was already 2 months pregnant. Unfortunately, I've been stuck in the palace and couldn't inform you. I listened in shock, a hand subconsciously placed on my lower abdomen. I couldn't believe it, I was 2 months pregnant. After 3 years of trying, there was finally a child. Our first ended in miscarriage after I saved him from the battlefield, and nothing had happened since. This time, he brought me back to Tiandu to help me get medical treatment. Unexpectedly, the child was already conceived before we arrived. But now, Wei Qi had personally delivered me and our child to the rebels. I couldn't imagine how he would feel if he ever found out. Would he remain as calm as he did after the miscarriage? Or would he feel any emotion towards me and our child? I watched him, seeing the snow pile up on his shoulders. He walked slowly along the palace path, and the murky oil lamps on the walls made this snowy night blurry and confusing. Chapter 6. As soon as Wei Qi left the palace gates, several deputies surrounded him. General, have you any news of the young madam? It turned out he had come to the palace to find out about me. Wei Qi shook his head. She received the summons to the palace that day. You must immediately search along the route to the palace, and put up notices with her portrait. Anyone who provides information will be rewarded with 10 taels of gold. I tried to tell him I was already out of the city, at the rebels' camp. Even if he had no feelings for me, he should let me rest in peace for the sake of our 3 years together. In the north, if the dead are not buried, they have no afterlife. But he couldn't hear me. Actually, if he thought carefully, he would realize something was wrong. For example, why didn't the rebels doubt it when they saw the princess's maid's body? Did he not want to believe that Princess Jinniang would kill me? Or did he not want to believe that I was dead and that he had sent me to the rebels? Back at the Wei residence, his father and second brother were waiting. During the siege, the Wei family army had traveled from the north to aid Wei Qi in defeating the rebels. The harsh conditions of the north had worn them down, and after years of constant war, only the three of them remained from their branch. Wei Qi told them I was pregnant, and both his father and brother were surprised. His father said that I must have been hiding somewhere, unaware that the siege was over, and urged Wei Qi to rest. He hadn't slept much over the past 2 months while defending the city. After Wei Qi left, I heard his brothers say to their father, "Father, I think Amara is already dead, and it was someone from the palace who did it." "Watch your words," his father scolded. "When will you learn to be as cautious as Wei Qi? Do you know how many eyes are watching us?" His brother bowed his head in silence. His father stared coldly in the direction of the palace. They had already figured out I was dead, so why did Wei Qi still think I was alive? Chapter 7. Wei Qi returned to our room. My clothes were still there, along with 2 plates of unfinished pastries and a book I had been reading. I hadn't been very literate before, but after marrying Wei Qi, I no longer had to work, so I started learning to read and write. I wanted to give myself a nice name. I didn't want to be called Amara anymore, too many girls in the north were named Amara. I wanted a name of my own. I once asked Wei Qi to help me choose one. He was well read, and I thought he would come up with a great name. But that day, he was busy washing his warhorse and absent-mindedly said, "Isn't Amara a good name?" So I didn't bring it up again. If I had known I would die so early, I wouldn't have wasted so much time trying to pick a good name. I died without ever having my own name. Wei Qi picked up the book, glanced at it, and put it down. He lay on the bed without undressing. I lay down on the couch beside him, feeling increasingly tired lately. Can ghosts get tired too? Wei Qi couldn't sleep. He sniffed the blanket we had used, then suddenly got up and walked out. Was there a smell on the blanket? I floated over and sniffed it but didn't smell anything. I followed him outside and saw him talking to a soldier, take a few men and quickly return to the north to bring Black Tiger. Black Tiger was a wolf dog he had raised. I understood then, he wanted to use Black Tiger's keen sense of smell to find me. But so much time had passed, would my scent still be there? Chapter 8. Black Tiger arrived in Tiandu the day before Princess Jinyang's birthday. During this time, the Wei family had sent out many people, but there was still no trace of me. The people of Tiandu knew that the young madam of the Wei family had gone missing while Wei Qi was defending the city. Some said I was likely dead, while others said I had been kidnapped by human traffickers. They said that during the siege, traffickers had taken advantage of the chaos to abduct many women. Wei Qi had also gone to the rebel camp, which had been burned to the ground. Princess Jinyang had said to burn my body if it was found. I wondered if I had already turned to ashes. If so, I would never have an afterlife. I was a girl who loved lively places. I feared living in this world where I could see but not be seen or heard. Wei Qi brought Black Tiger into the room and let him sniff my clothes. I watched Black Tiger expectantly, hoping he would find me, even if it was just a charred corpse. Spring was coming, and I had never seen spring in the Central Plains. Wei Qi had said that spring in the Central Plains was lush and vibrant, unlike the desolation of the north. I wanted to see such a spring before moving on. Black Tiger sniffed around, then suddenly stopped. He circled the room and finally lay down at my feet, whimpering sadly. I was stunned and tentatively patted his head. "Black Tiger, can you see me?" I had heard that animals could see spirits. But Black Tiger didn't look at me, he just nudged my hand gently with his head. I realized he couldn't see me but could sense me and knew I was dead. Wei Qi didn't know this. He squatted down, puzzled, and looked at Black Tiger. "What's wrong?" Black Tiger whimpered again, then gently bit Wei Qi's wrist and placed his hand on mine. He wanted to tell him that I was right there, in his hand. Just like a few days before we came to Tiandu, Wei Qi didn't want me to come along. I got angry and rode out to the wilderness to watch the stars. That night, he and Black Tiger came to find me. I was still mad and didn't want to go back with him. He sat beside me, not saying anything to comfort me, as usual. Black Tiger looked at me, then at Wei Qi, and finally bit Wei Qi's hand and placed it on mine. Though he couldn't speak, he understood human emotions. I was still angry and tried to pull my hand away, but Wei Qi held it firmly. His strong, slender hand gripped mine, and he finally agreed, "I'll take you, but you must promise not to run off, to be careful, and not to say anything you shouldn't." I happily tackled him onto the dry grass and pecked his lips. "Okay, I promise." He said I was too carefree and would be laughed at in Tiandu. But I saw he wasn't really laughing at me. The moon and stars reflected in his eyes, enchanting me. I think our child was conceived that night. That day, I fulfilled 2 wishes, but in the end, I still lost to fate. Chapter 9. Wei Qi stared blankly at his hand. For a fleeting moment, I saw a glimpse of panic and sadness in his eyes. He quickly got up and continued having Black Tiger sniff my clothes. I knew this wouldn't work, so I floated outside, hoping Black Tiger would follow me to my body. It worked. As soon as I moved, Black Tiger followed, and Wei Qi mounted his horse and pursued us. I floated towards the outskirts of the city, but as we passed the palace, Black Tiger stopped and refused to follow me. Moments later, it darted towards the palace gates like an arrow. I didn't know what was happening but followed anyway. Seeing a large dog charging towards them, the palace guards drew their swords. "Halt!" Wei Qi commanded as he arrived, jumping off his horse to calm Black Tiger. The dog nudged him and mournfully howled at the grand palace buildings. I knew it had found something but couldn't communicate like a human. Wei Qi looked up at the palace, his face unreadable in the light. He took several steps forward until the guards stopped him. "General Wei, you cannot enter without a summons." He paused, restricted by the rules, but I could move freely. Chapter 10. I found Princess Jinyang and the concubine in the ice house. My body lay there too, still dressed in the luxurious princess attire, looking like I was merely asleep. That's why Black Tiger was so upset, it knew I was here. But why hadn't Princess Jinyang burned my body as she had claimed she would? "What? You want to marry her off to Yang Zhao in the afterlife?" the concubine asked, surprised. "Yes," Princess Jinyang replied, "Yang Zhao's spirit haunts me day and night. This Su Amara can take my place. He always wanted a child, but I never bore him one, and this woman is pregnant." Perfect. I was shocked she knew I was carrying Wei Qi's child all along, yet she still killed me. She's insane. The concubine advised, "We should hide Su Amara's body where no one will find it. If Wei Qi discovers the truth, there will be trouble." Princess Jinyang laughed, "So what? Will he kill me?" The concubine warned, "He is not the same Wei Qi as before. Don't forget, Wei Qi's exile was due to your father's suspicion after he accidentally killed the Zhao family's heir while protecting you, and you did nothing to clear his name." Princess Jinyang remained indifferent. The Wei family was too powerful back then. I couldn't have sided with them. Besides, I asked Wei Qi about it recently, and he said the past is in the past. The concubine shook her head, "He may have forgiven you for not defending him back then, but now you've killed his wife and child." "But he loves me," Princess Jinyang interrupted. "He only married Su Amara because she looks like me." The concubine sighed, "You're fooling yourself. Remember, he married Su Amara when he was blind during the siege. He couldn't tell who she looked like." I was stunned. I never knew Wei Qi was once blind or that the Wei family had been under surveillance all this time. But it all made sense now. My father was anxious to marry me off to Wei Qi because he feared Wei Qi's blindness might cause further troubles. Wei Qi only came to our room at night, forbidding lamps and rarely speaking. Intimacy was mostly initiated by me. 3 months later, when his sight improved, he went back to the battlefield. He left so quickly we didn't have time to see each other. Later, I found him gravely injured in the snow. I held him, calling his name repeatedly. He finally regained some consciousness, blinked, but couldn't open his eyes. Amara. I was overjoyed. It's me. Why are you here? He asked. They said you were dead, but I didn't believe it, so I came looking for you. Luckily, I did. He told me to leave, forget about me. We'll both die here if you don't. I held him tighter, tears streaming down my face. I won't leave. If you die, I'll die with you. I told him I had liked him since the day he broke my shackles and gave me water. I loved him and wasn't afraid of death. He finally said, I felt it was you, and longed at me. I thought he was just looking. Now I realize that was the first time he truly saw me. And my appearance, similar to his first love. What was he feeling back then? I guess I'll never know. Chapter 11. Princess Jinniang was unmoved by the concubine's warning. She insisted on marrying me to Yang Zhao in the afterlife, right after her birthday. I searched the palace but couldn't find Yang Zhao's spirit. Was it really Yang Zhao haunting her, or just her own guilt? I floated out of the palace and saw that Wei Qi had already left with Black Tiger. Back at the Wei residence, he was sharpening his sword, with Black Tiger lying at his feet. I floated over and squatted beside him, trying to tell him that I was in the ice house of the princess's palace. Princess Jinniang wanted to marry me to Yang Zhao and give our child to him as well. I told him I didn't want to be with Yang Zhao, he was a pitiful soul too, and we shouldn't be treated this way. But he couldn't hear me. Feeling tired, I floated to the bed and lay down. When I woke up, I felt less exhausted. Strange. Do ghosts need sleep too? I opened my eyes and found Wei Qi lying beside me, facing me, his breath just inches from my nose. In the 10 days since my death, I had always floated near him, but this was the first time we had slept together. I suddenly realized that my strength was returning because I was absorbing his energy. But this would make him weaker. I floated out, and it was still dark, with snow still falling. In the corner of the courtyard, my second brother was burning incense and paper money, muttering, Amara, come eat. Wei Qi won't admit you're dead and won't burn offerings for you, but how will you survive in this cold weather? We've turned Tiandu upside down looking for you. If you're warm and fed, come to us in a dream and tell us where you are, and we'll come get you. Tears welled up in my eyes. Though he often said I was too lively and needed Wei Qi to discipline me, he had never been harsh or unkind. Now, he was worried I was cold and hungry and wanted to come for me. Second brother, I can't receive these offerings. Stop burning them and go back inside, I told him. But he couldn't hear me either. Chapter 12. At dawn, Wei Qi prepared to attend Princess Jinniang's birthday banquet. He changed into a fine robe. In the north, he mostly wore armor and plain clothes. This was the first time I saw him in such elegant attire. He was already handsome, and now, dressed in fine clothes and bearing great achievements, he looked every bit the noble hero. A man like him truly deserved a princess of noble birth. But I couldn't help but hold him. He was still the man I loved. As he fastened his jade belt, Wei Qi suddenly paused, looking down as if he sensed my presence. But in the end, he saw nothing. I followed him to the banquet, which was held outdoors. Despite the snow and ice, the charcoal fires and heated floors kept it warm, though I wondered how much it had cost. With natural disasters and heavy taxes, the people were suffering, leading to the rise of rebels. I had hoped the siege would make the royals more frugal, but they were more extravagant than ever. Wei Qi's arrival drew everyone's attention. The women shyly glanced at him, and the noblemen eagerly greeted him. Princess Jinniang was delighted to see him and immediately took him to her palace after the banquet. Wei Qi didn't resist, letting her lead him by the hand. Once inside, she pushed him onto the bed, lying on his chest. "Wei Qi, stay with me tonight." Wei Qi smiled faintly, "All right." As she reached to undo his belt, he stopped her. "Shouldn't the princess bathe first?" She hesitated. "Do you think I'm dirty?" Wei Qi replied, "No, it's just the smell of the charcoal is strong today." She sniffed herself. "All right, come with me." Wei Qi looked at her. "Princess, there are many eyes around. We should be discreet. There will be other nights." Reluctantly, she agreed. As she went to bathe, Wei Qi's smile faded, and he got off the bed. He stood silently, staring at the soft bed. "When he had come in that day, I lay on this bed with a white cloth over my face. Even the bedding was the same. I couldn't understand Princess Jinniang's obsession with being with Wei Qi on the bed where I had died." Wei Qi closed his eyes, seemingly lost in thought. When he opened them, he looked around at the palace maids. They were all new, those present on the day of my death had likely been silenced. He even opened Princess Jinniang's wardrobe. I saw my undergarments hanging inside. I wondered if Wei Qi would recognize them, but he had never paid attention to what I wore. No matter how carefully I dressed, he would always tear them off without a second thought. He glanced at them and closed the wardrobe. He hadn't noticed. Princess Jinniang emerged from her bath, radiant like a peony after the rain. "Wei Qi, I'm here," she said, embracing him from behind. Wei Qi didn't turn around. "Princess, I'll ask you one last time. Have you truly never seen my wife?" Her eyes turned cold. "No." Wei Qi smiled, "Then I have no more concerns." I couldn't bear to watch what would happen next and floated out, feeling distressed. But soon, Wei Qi also came out. It couldn't be, that was too quick. He had never been like that before. I looked back into the hall and saw Princess Jinniang asleep on the bed, with a stranger beside her. I quickly looked away and followed Wei Qi, feeling both relieved and worried. Relieved that he had left the princess, but worried about what she would do when she discovered his deception. But he didn't seem to care. He walked alone through the long palace corridors, the lanterns casting flickering light on his face. In the shifting light, I thought I saw a tear fall from his eye. But when the wind stopped, the tear was gone. Maybe it wasn't a tear, just snow melting on his lashes like before. After leaving the palace, he didn't return to the Wei residence but took another path. This was the route he had taken to deliver my body to the rebels. That night, the streets were packed with people. Tonight, he walked alone. Only the falling snow was the same. He stopped at the spot where he had handed me over, now a ruin. I floated in front of him. "Are you looking for my body?" "I'm not here, I'm in the ice house at the palace." A guard approached with a torch and saluted him. Wei Qi asked, "How did the fire start?" The guard replied, "The night after the rebels surrendered, a fire broke out in the storage area, spreading with the wind and burning everything, killing some people. But only rebels died." Wei Qi swayed. "Where are the charred bodies now?" The guard pointed, "Over there." He walked over and examined the bodies, murmuring, "None of them are her." I found it strange. He hadn't recognized me when I was whole, but now he could tell I wasn't among the charred remains. Chapter 13. For 3 days, Princess Jinniang didn't trouble the Wei family, seemingly oblivious to the fact that the man she spent the night with was someone else. Wei Qi was busy with military duties during this time, and I stayed at the Wei residence. After absorbing his energy, I had developed a craving for it. Whenever I got close to him, I couldn't resist wanting to kiss him and drain him completely. Unaware of this, he allowed me to do so. To avoid harming him, I tried to keep my distance. On the 4th day, while I was playing with Black Tiger, 2 red threads suddenly bound my hands and lifted me into the air, pulling me towards the palace. I struggled desperately but couldn't break free. I realized that today might be the day of my ghost marriage with Yang Zhao. Black Tiger chased after me through the streets, scaring the onlookers who thought he was a mad dog. He leaped up and bit one of the red threads, using all his strength to pull me back to the Wei residence. Perhaps because he was a black dog, he managed to bite through the thread that I couldn't break. Freed, I hurriedly floated back towards the Wei residence, but a thicker red thread soon wrapped tightly around my neck. Black Tiger tried to bite this new thread too, but just as he was about to succeed, a stick struck him, making him yelp in pain. "This dog is rabid, beat it to death," the ignorant crowd shouted, hitting him mercilessly with sticks. "Black Tiger, run! Leave me!" I cried out. But the foolish dog, even while coughing up blood, kept crawling towards me. Eventually, the distance between us grew, and I could no longer see him. Chapter 14. I was pulled into the palace and landed heavily on a coffin. I saw myself inside, dressed in a beautiful wedding gown, with makeup on my face. "All right, she's ready," said an old woman who looked like a Shmara. Princess Jinnyang was standing nearby. "She didn't come willingly," the princess asked. The Shmara laughed, "Willing or not, no one escapes from me." Princess Jinnyang frowned, "Will she listen to Yang Zhao? She won't try to escape, will she?" "I have ways to make her obey the late prince," the Shmara replied. She placed a straw doll with my name on it inside the coffin, tied it with red threads, and nailed it with peachwood spikes. I was pinned to the coffin, unable to move. Princess Jinnyang looked at the coffin and said, "Su Amara, I know you can hear me. It's your good fortune to take my place. I will live happily with Wei Qi, with children and grandchildren." I struggled and cursed her, "I curse you to be torn apart, to die a horrible death, never to be reincarnated." The copper bells under the eaves jingled, reacting to my resentment. The Shmara was startled and warned the princess not to provoke me further. The coffin was taken out of the palace, and Princess Jinnyang had arranged a grand procession of hundreds of people, even with imperial guards, for this absurd funeral. Citizens lined the streets, watching and praising the princess's benevolence, her sacrifice for the people, and now her kindness to her late husband. They said I was fortunate to be married to the late prince even in death, enjoying the princess's honor. They didn't realize the princess enjoyed the world's wealth while using others' lives to appear virtuous. They laughed and discussed whether my body had been defiled by the rebels. Those rough farmers probably saw even a maid as a heavenly beauty. They wouldn't let a body like that go to waste. Right, I wonder what it was like. Curious? Find yourself a beautiful corpse and try it next time. My eyes burned with hatred as I looked at their mocking faces, wanting to tear their throats apart and drink their blood. But I could do nothing but let the cold wind blow over my coffin. Chapter 15. Suddenly, the procession stopped. The onlookers fell silent, looking down the long street. I followed their gazes and saw Wei Qi, standing tall on his horse, armed with a longbow and sword, exuding a deadly aura. Behind him were dozens of soldiers from the north, dressed for battle. Princess Jinnyang seemed surprised to see him. "General Wei, weren't you chasing the remaining rebels?" Wei Qi didn't answer her. Instead, he said, "When I was 3, my grandfather told me that the great Zhou once relied on princesses marrying into foreign lands to secure peace. Those princesses all met tragic ends. He said that as a member of the Wei family, we must ensure no princess has to marry for peace and no wolves invade our homeland. I first saw you when I was 5. My grandfather told me that you were the princess we had to protect. From then on, I stayed by your side, viewing you as my honor. I believed you treated me sincerely." Princess Jinnyang appeared uneasy. "General Wei, let's discuss this back at the palace." Ignoring her, Wei Qi continued, riding closer, "When you were 17, you were harassed by the Zhao prince. I argued with him to protect you, and he fell on his sword. The emperor said the Wei family started it on purpose. My grandfather took his life before the court to avert conflict. My aunt, consort Wei, hanged herself in her chamber. Other family members were exiled or died in battle. Only 30 of us remain. You didn't clear my name, letting them believe I was guilty. My father said a subject must die if ordered, for the peace of the realm. I always thought Wei Qi was quiet by nature, not knowing he had so much pain. But you. His eyes turned red. You killed my Amara while I was fighting for your family. My Amara? It was the first time he'd called me by my name. Princess Jiniang fiercely denied, I didn't. General Wei, don't listen to lies. How could she still lie at this point? With a raised sword, Wei Qi pointed at her. You knew she was pregnant and killed her. You had me deliver her to the rebels. I protected you for 12 years, not knowing you were a monster. The guards drew their weapons. Are you rebelling, Wei Qi? He sneered, what if I am? That day, Wei Qi killed many people. When his sword dulled, he grabbed another and continued the slaughter. I had never seen him kill like this, like a ferocious beast, his eyes devoid of life, focused only on the carnage. This was the Wei Qi from his 6 years on the battlefield. The townspeople screamed and fled, and the pampered palace guards were no match for these northern wolves. Princess Jiniang tried to escape on horseback, her riding skills impressive. Just as she was about to get away, an arrow pierced her body, knocking her off her horse. It was Wei Qi who had shot the arrow. The princess wasn't dead yet. She crawled forward, but Wei Qi followed, covered in blood, some his own, most from others. He shot 2 more arrows, pinning her legs to the ground. His aim was always precise. I remembered when he taught me archery. He was so serious, guiding my waist, lifting my hand, showing me how to draw the bow. I took the chance to kiss him, and he would block my lips, saying, "Stop it." I would persist, and he would finally carry me away in exasperation. That summer, I never did learn to shoot. Chapter 16. Princess Jiniang could no longer move, lying on the ground in agony. Wei Qi knelt beside her. She cried, "Wei Qi, I was framed. You have to believe me." Framed? Wei Qi sneered, "You strangled Amara, cried that she was your maid and died in your place. I heard it myself. Who framed you? You left her clothes in plain sight. Did you think I wouldn't recognize her belongings? You were just showing off. Li Chonghuan, you're insane." Princess Jiniang grabbed his hand. "Yes, I'm insane. Wei Qi, for the sake of our 3 nights together, spare me. Or let me be your Amara. I'll be more obedient, make you happier, and bear you many children." Wei Qi pulled his hand away. "You like me so much, didn't you realize the man with you those nights wasn't me?" She was stunned. "It wasn't you?" Wei Qi tightened the bowstring around her neck. "It was a rebel, the ones you despise the most." Princess Jiniang looked at him in disbelief, realizing he truly intended to kill her. She shouted, "You can't kill me. I'm a princess of Dezhou. My father will destroy your entire family." "Destroy my family?" Wei Qi laughed, tears in his eyes. "Didn't I just say? My family is already dead because of you. And haven't you noticed? No one has come to save you." Princess Jiniang looked around. The townspeople had fled, and the guards were either dead or gone. The empty street reeked of blood. She finally panicked, begging, "Wei Qi, please don't kill me. I really love you." She gasped, looking down at the dagger in her abdomen, held by Wei Qi. "This is for my dead child," he said, pushing the blade deeper. Princess Jiniang's eyes widened in pain. Then he twisted the bowstring, "And this is for my dead wife." He strangled her, just as she had strangled me with the white silk. Chapter 17. Wei Qi released the bowstring, and Princess Jiniang fell to the ground, her neck broken, blood slowly seeping out. Killing the princess would indeed lead to the extermination of his entire family, even if only a few remained. Fool! I cried. He grabbed a handful of snow to clean his hands and then walked towards my coffin. Run! Go back to the north. If you wait any longer, it'll be too late. I shouted at him. But he couldn't hear me. He reached my side, cut the red strings, and pulled out the peachwood nails from the straw doll. I was finally free. He opened the coffin lid, and my body appeared before his eyes. He looked at me, but there were no tears. I thought he would cry, but he was as calm as ever. He lifted me out, tore off the red wedding dress and the jewelry from my head, wiped off my makeup, and carried me step by step back to the Wei residence. On the way back, I saw Black Tiger lying motionless, its eyes still open. Wei Qi stopped and had Black Tiger's body brought back as well. He placed my body on the bed and extinguished all the charcoal fires to prevent my body from decaying quickly. Then he sat beside me, looking at me for a long time. Just like the first day he saw me, but now I was no longer there. I was terrified, thinking the palace guards would come to arrest him, but instead, we received news that my father-in-law had ascended the throne. The Wei family had indeed rebelled. The crumbling Li dynasty was overthrown by its exiled protectors, and Dezhou had a new ruler overnight. When my second brother returned, Wei Qi was still sitting there. Amara is finally back. My brother cried, at first just wiping his tears, then sobbing loudly. Men rarely cry, but he was truly heartbroken for me. Yet Wei Qi remained the same, even able to converse with others. I had thought he liked me, but now I wasn't sure. I felt a bit disappointed. I wanted to see him cry for me, even if it was just one tear. Chapter 18. When spring arrived, my father-in-law named my second brother-in-law the crown prince, and Wei Qi became a prince. As Wei Qi's primary wife, I was to be buried. But strangely, I thought that once my body was buried, I would move on to the next life. My body had been at the Wei residence for over a month when my father-in-law ordered Wei Qi to bury me. On the day of the burial, I floated up to the sky, overlooking the spring in the central plains. It was indeed as beautiful as Wei Qi had described, with lush greenery and picturesque mountains. I saw my tombstone inscribed with the tomb of Su Yingzhen, Princess of Pingchao. It was Wei Qi handwriting. He remembered that I had asked him to give me a name. Now I finally had my own name, Su Yingzhen. Wei Qi, is there a story behind this name? I asked him, though he still couldn't hear me. No story? That's fine. I like it, I said with a smile. I hugged him one last time, resisting the urge to drain his energy, and kissed his lips as a farewell. Despite my reluctance, he was only 24 and still had his life ahead of him. His eyelashes fluttered, and he looked down as if he could see me, as if he knew what I was doing. I stared at him, puzzled, but couldn't figure it out. Then I waited to dissipate, but even after the tomb was sealed, I was still there. After spending some time in the tomb, I remained. I began to panic. If I didn't move on after being buried, I would become a vengeful spirit. When an exorcist came, I would be destroyed. Chapter 19. I floated out of the tomb and returned to Tiandu, where I happened to encounter another female ghost. I asked her why she hadn't moved on to the next life. She pointed to a woman selling jewelry and smiled, "That's my daughter. I've been dead for 3 years, but her longing for me keeps me from moving on." I figured my situation was similar. I floated back to Wei Qi's side. Maybe it was him. He was sitting in the courtyard with his eyes closed, brewing tea, looking perfectly serene. While I hoped he could live a normal life, seeing this still pained me. I had been buried for less than a month, and he already seemed to have forgotten me. As I was about to leave, a gust of wind blew a fallen flower across his face. Then I heard him say, "Amara, stop it." I was puzzled, I hadn't done anything. He opened his eyes and saw it was just a withered flower, not me. He froze for a moment and suddenly coughed up blood. I was terrified. Even when he had been gravely injured, he had never coughed up blood like this. I clumsily tried to help him, but my hands just passed through his body. He staggered to his feet just as my brother arrived and quickly supported him, calling for a physician. "Brother, I regret bringing Amara back to Tiandu," Wei Qi said. My brother consoled him, "Wei Qi, don't blame yourself. It wasn't your fault." Tears mingled with blood streamed down Wei Qi's face. "No, it is my fault. I caused her death." He lamented not being firmer, not refusing me when I begged to come along, not believing that keeping me inside would prevent trouble. He regretted not finishing the dumplings I made for him that morning before he left. He said if he had known, he wouldn't have let spies keep us apart for 3 years, that he should have spent time riding horses, praying at the sacred mountain, and raising children with me, living peacefully in the north. He cursed himself for standing before my corpse and failing to recognize me, for personally delivering me and our child to the rebels. He said, if she has a soul and sees what I have done to her, how heartbroken and despondent she must be. I told him, I'm heartbroken, but I never hated you. You didn't know. But he couldn't hear me. I finally understood that it was indeed his memories of me holding him back, mistaking a falling flower for me. His calmness wasn't real, it was an unspoken torment that eventually trapped me and destroyed him. Chapter 20. Wei Qi fell ill for a long time. After recovering, he returned to the battlefield. Despite objections from his father and brother, he went anyway. In 3 years, he defeated Xi Zhao and Nan Yu, driving the Chilo tribe to the far north, making Ping Chao the ruler of the land. I followed him everywhere, resting by his side and occasionally absorbing his energy by kissing him. I dared not take much, just 3 sips at most. He never noticed, but a kind monk once warned him that a female ghost might be draining his energy and could eventually take his life force, causing his death. Amused, he asked, "Oh? How exactly would she do that?" The monk stammered, unable to explain, and Wei Qi threatened to destroy their temple if they spread such rumors. No one dared mention it again. In the 4th spring, my father-in-law fell seriously ill, and Wei Qi had to return to Tiandu quickly. On the way back, he saw a pregnant woman begging by the roadside. He dismounted and gave her food, water, and money. She also asked for his cloak, which he gave without hesitation, but she took the opportunity to stab him. Although it was a small wound, the blade was poisoned. I didn't know who wanted to kill him, only his father and brother knew his route back. His men brought him to the best medical clinic in the city, but the doctor shook his head. Wei Qi smiled and said it was fine, that he had lived enough already. Finally, he asked the doctor, "Sir, do spirits exist after death?" The doctor kindly replied, "Yes, everyone has a spirit and can move on to the next life." Wei Qi smiled, "I think so too. I often feel my wife is by my side, even though she never appears in my dreams. But now, it seems she's here to take me. I see her holding my hand." I was shocked, as I was indeed holding his hand. Then, I saw his eyes meet mine. He was stunned and then gently smiled, "Amara, you're really here." I started crying, "You need to go back. You shouldn't see me." He hugged me, "I'm not going back. I've already lived 7 extra years. If you hadn't found me back then, I'd be dead." I cried and cried. After all these years, someone could finally talk to me, and it was him. He comforted me, saying he always felt my presence but had never seen or dreamt of me. He knew a ghost was draining his energy but never let an exorcist purify him, fearing it might be me and that I'd get hurt. He apologized for not recognizing me that day, saying it was his lifelong regret. "Amara, I'll never fail to recognize you again," he said. I nodded, "All right, I'll give you another chance." He smiled, though tears glistened in his eyes, and kissed me. I held him, but then a question came to mind: did you ever mistake me for Princess Jinnyang? He looked into my eyes and said, never. Initially, I was just following our parents' wishes, but somewhere along the way, I wanted more with you. Despite fate's twists, I'm glad I didn't miss out. In his eyes, I saw my familiar self, Amara. Chapter 21. The medical clinic vanished, replaced by the sound of rushing water from a flowing river. Nearby, a black dog lay by the shore. Seeing us, it sprang up, wagging its tail furiously and running towards us. It was Black Tiger. The silly dog had waited for us all this time. Wei Qi and I patted its head together and then walked forward hand in hand, relaxed and at peace.